Hi everyone, Dr. Stephen Hesse here from resourceyourhealth.com. In this video, I'm just going to talk about the blog post I put out today when we talk about, is the heart really a pump? And I also want to talk about, if it's not, which I would argue that it's not the pressure propulsion pump that we think it is, how is that relevant to our health? And so to start off, we got to talk about this thing called exclusion zone water, which I talked about before. And the exclusion zone water forms on the lining of the arteries. And one thing that it does is it protects the arteries, but it also helps propel blood flow. Because of the way the water forms in the lining of the arteries, it creates this energy gradient that actually pushes blood through arteries and veins. And this has been proven in the lab of Dr. Gerald Pollack. I just had correspondence with him this week, and he said that one of his graduate students has shown that this effect does happen in the cardiovascular system. So if water or blood is flowing on its own, and he's shown that it can flow pretty quickly, and we don't really need the heart to be forcefully pumping the blood, then what type of system are we talking about where there's a pump-like mechanism inserted into already flowing blood? And so when we look at that, we can compare the heart more to a hydraulic ram. And don't worry, I didn't know what a hydraulic ram was either when I first came across it. But basically, a hydraulic ram is something that is flow dependent. So the mechanism only operates when the fluid is flowing into it from some other force, whether it's gravity or a flowing river or something like that. So since we have that situation in our cardiovascular system where the blood is already flowing into the heart without the heart having to suck it in and forcefully pump it out, we have this mechanism of hydraulic ram. Now, how a hydraulic ram actually works, I'm not going to go into because it's hard to explain that without visuals, but the visuals are in the blog post, so refer back to that, and I have the visuals there for you. So if the heart is not forcefully sucking in blood and pumping it out, it's not this pressure propulsion pump we've been told, then what is it and why is it there? So to me, there's three functions of our heart. One, it's a damming up organ, which means it's slowing the flow of blood, it's stopping the flow of blood. And so that's really important when we have increased metabolic demand in our tissues. Like if we go for a run, we're really stressed out about something, the body pushes blood into our tissues and into our arterial side of things. And if the heart wasn't there to slow that transition from an pressure balance system to all the pressure being over into the arteries, if the heart wasn't there to stop that from happening, then all the blood would go over to the arteries and the tissues, and the pressure in the veins would collapse, and we'd have a breakdown of the whole system because we need even pressure throughout the whole system. So the heart is really placed in the middle of things to maintain that pressure in the system. The other thing is that the heart actually functions like a vortex. So when it contracts, we've shown that it contracts in a spiral formation. So it's actually spiraling the blood as it contracts. And there's a really interesting video that I linked to on the blog called The Helical Heart that describes how the heart muscles are kind of oriented so that it does this. And this ability of it to kind of contract in the spiral formation is key for function, but also key because vortexing of the blood is one way that we build the energy needed in the blood so that it can build the exclusion zone water, which drives the flow, which is this beautifully set up system, in my opinion. And then the last function of the heart is it seems to have this real connection with our emotional state, which we always say, I love you with all my heart, or you gave it all your heart. There's this emotional connection there. And so I think that it's our emotional sensor. We feel things in our heart, and that gets interpreted to our brain, and our brain has the appropriate emotional response or gives our body the appropriate signals to have that emotional response. So those are the three functions, I believe, of the heart. And so in order to ensure that we continue this flow into the heart so that it can function properly, we need to do things like get infrared light or radiant light. So we get that from the sun. These days people do infrared saunas, which are very useful, and studies have shown that they increase blood flow and heal the lining of the artery. Do things like grounding. So Dr. Pollack has noted that when we're standing barefoot on the earth, our toes are 200 times more electronegative than our nose. And so that negative energy, that electron energy is coming into our bodies and structuring or helping our water, or the water in our arteries, to be structured. So grounding is really important. And then, as I mentioned, infrared saunas, things like that. Now, what's the implications of this? So what if we don't increase this building of this exclusion zone water so we get flow? Well, that would force the heart to actually have more of a pumping mechanism, and that's not what it's meant to do. It does provide a little bit of contraction and it forces things out, but it's not enough to supply the whole body with blood flow. And so if we don't have this exclusion zone water building on the lining of our arteries, the heart is forced to do more of that, and that's when I think we get into trouble. That's when we get things like congestive heart failure and cardiomyopathy. We start to see the heart kind of change shape. It changes into a more of a ball shape, a sphere shape, rather than like a football shape where it's a spiral or a vortex. And that's the characteristic of cardiomyopathy and congestive heart failure. Those types of things are seen when we get those kind of conditions. And so it's really important that we give our body the energy it needs to build that exclusion zone water, so the heart's never forced to actually act more like a forceful pump. So that's it for now. For all the details, head over to the blog post I did called "Is the Heart Really a Pump?" And check that out. If you like this video, please like and share it with whoever you think would benefit. Otherwise, stay healthy out there.